Well, hello and welcome back to week 5 of our Word to the Wise series on the X Church Discipleship Pod, as we called it last week.
I like that.
Making it a little bit more hip, trendy,
Gen Z.
Gen Z-ish as we go. It's been such a fun ride with you. If you are just joining us, I encourage you to go back, watch, binge the whole all 5 episodes as we kind of break down different parts of the book of James. If you found it helpful, do me a favor, share it with someone, as I think it could really encourage someone in their faith. If this has been something that's been enlightening for you, if you have questions or just comments or whatever, we'd love to know. You can just email us at discipleship@thex.church. We'd love to do that. But like we said, this is a resource paired with our sermon series, so we're kind of doing this in conjunction with it. And so we have communicators who are bringing parts of the chapters to us, and then we're breaking down maybe parts of the chapter that aren't going to be touched on a Sunday morning. And so we are going to be diving into chapter 5 today, and we're going to be starting with verse 7 and going to verse 12. And so we'll read it to us. I'm reading in an NIV translation. If y'all want to pull out your Bibles and follow along, James chapter 5, verse 7. James says, "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord is coming near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance, and I have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned." As always, we're going to jump into our framework for breaking down this passage of Scripture with just a simple observations of what is James saying here to us.
Hold your horses.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of like eschatology verbiage in there, which is just like end times language.
Yeah. So hold your horses. A lot of end times language.
We see the theme of suffering come back up.
Theme of suffering definitely coming back up. We see an idea of don't grumble against one another, with a warning to not judge, not to judge. Grumble, I think about like gossip maybe, or don't complain about
like
one another.
Synonyms to grumble.
That is kind of a unique word. The judge is standing at the door. There's some end times type of language there. Anything else? What other what?
Let your yes be yes and your no be no.
There we go.
You know, we can get into this a little bit later, but like, I love that verse. And I think I've always viewed it through the lens of like integrity. Let your words have integrity.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it's saying that because it's talking about our speech, and it's saying like, don't swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, meaning like don't enter into a verbal contract with someone if you can't uphold your end of the deal, right? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Goes back to like the integrity of your words, and that you're going to be truthful, and make sure that your commitments are in line with what is important to God.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the Bible always calls us to live higher, right? Like it calls us to a higher way of living. And when I hear let your yes be yes and your no be no, the first thing that keeps me from like if I meet someone new, I'm like, oh, maybe we could be friends, and I'm feeling that out. If they're flaky, if they don't follow through on the things that they say they're going to do, if they're not reliable, like I don't really want that in a friend. And I think that James here is painting like don't represent Christ and be that way, or you're not representing like faith well, right?
I just can't help but this is like so aging me. I just can't help but think like the difference in like cultural there's cultural barriers to this, like truthfulness of speech, because there's cultures where like honor is a big deal, and so honor would mean like you show up early to things or whatever, or generationally, I feel like there's some like disconnects in generations and like their speech and the integrity of their words, or yes being yes or no being no. Like what does, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like I feel like
So I can give an example of this. My family that I married into, so now my like husband's family, something that I learned very quickly in marriage is that they are all about thank you notes. So like if you get a birthday gift, write them a thank you note and mail it to them. Like that's how you honor them. That's how they feel like very respected. And that's like a weird cultural thing in our family even that I learned was just showing like gratitude and reciprocation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that calls us to be aware of the people around us. Another flag of awareness that James is giving us, like be aware of your surroundings and the people you're interacting with and what's important to them, and how do you uphold your end of the deal in their eyes. I
don't know if this was mentioned already or not, but when I think about like yes or yes, or like a yes, BS, and no but no, I think about like trustworthiness. Like what does it look like to be a person who is trustworthy? And I think about this in two ways. The obvious connection, what you guys are talking about, is in reference to other people. But I also think about this in context of our relationship to God. And if you go back up in I'm going to go back to verse 10. So James is referring back to something that the Jewish people who he's writing to, let's remember that he's writing to Jewish people, would have understood, that he's encouraging them to be patient in the face of suffering. Take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. So he's speaking to people who he knows are suffering, and he's reminding them that the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord, they suffered. And he says, as you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. So the prophets suffered, and then we say that they're blessed because of their perseverance. Remember about Job. And we've seen what the Lord has finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. And so he's almost like, well, you know this. And since you know that God is faithful and that he's full of compassion and he's full of mercy, then you get verse 12, above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or birth, or by anything else. Like, there doesn't need to be almost like this, like, I don't want to say false bravado or some sort of like I swear to God, or almost like an impatience by like connecting oaths to like hurry up God, even in some like, just if God is telling you to do something, just say yes or no. Yeah.
You know, what you just said was actually really impactful, because think about Job. We wouldn't really listen to Job's story and be like, yeah, the Lord is so compassionate and merciful, because he allowed Job to be tested by Satan, right?
Yeah.
But what I love is that Satan was just trying to get Job to curse God, to denounce God, and to say that he wasn't compassionate and merciful. So he was like the prime person to use in this reference here in this verse.
Yeah, it's good.
I think also, as we were reading over this, something that stuck out to me was, here we go with the agricultural language again. He says, see how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth and is patient with it until it receives the early and late rains.
I love that.
And then even also how it's talking about, as an example of suffering and patience, there's so much of this in his language that is so beyond and out of that person's control.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're a farmer waiting for rains, how frustrating is it when it doesn't rain? And that when you don't have enough rain in order for your crop to, like, yield something that you'll be able to harvest.
Yeah.
And so I think, in essence, like, the message that is, like, subtly being communicated is, you really don't have control over a lot. Yeah. So the thing that you do have control over is your patience.
Yeah. And we need to look at that.
And your speech.
We need to look at that too in the context of, like, if they didn't produce a harvest, they couldn't just drive to, like, Kroger and get themselves some more veggies. Yeah. Like, they would starve, and that was how they made their money as well. Yeah. So I couldn't imagine, you know, I'm trying to put myself in this narrative, and recent homeowner and trying to get my sod to grow. And it's frustrating for me to look at the sky and be like, God, bring the rain because my water bill is egregiously high. Yes. But that's the patience that he's calling us to, is like a trust that's even so far beyond what we think we're capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting too, when I think about the farmer analogy, I guarantee you farmers, I'm not a farmer, so I don't know, but my first job ever working in ministry, I worked in a farming community. And so it was interesting, like being immersed in that culture for 3 years. Farmers are some of the hardest working people you can ever possibly imagine. It's not like they're just, okay, we're just going to sit and twiddle our thumbs this summer as we wait.
While the corn grows.
Yeah, while the corn grows. Like there's always something more to do.
Yeah.
And I just think that.
Yeah, and have you seen those farmers who are reaping the harvest at 3 a.m. driving those giant things in the middle of the night?
This is why farmersonly.com exists. They know they need one of their own.
They need one of their own. I just think that it is interesting that there's, even when we're waiting for God to show up or God to do something, there's more that we can be doing. There's more that we can be putting into action.
That's good.
As we go.
I mean, I think we kind of answered the so what. I mean, like
yes.
the context of who he was talking to and why he was saying these things.
Yeah.
I have one more what. I wanted to talk about verse 9 really quick, where it said, do not complain about one another. It says grumble in the NIV, right?
Yeah, grumble.
And I wanted to look up some synonyms to grumble, because it's kind of like what does that mean exactly? Some synonyms are mutter, to whine, to groan, to object, even, and complain. And I think it's very normal in our world today, especially like in work settings. I don't know if you've experienced this. We all work together, so it's kind of funny. But to go home and like instantly start complaining about your day. And I don't experience that as much now, but definitely when I worked like in a retail job where Christ was not even a conversation in any way, shape, or form within my work day, it was very easy to go home and just complain about people and to not picture them as an image bearer of Christ, whether they knew him or not.
Yep. Any other application?
I underlined strengthen your hearts because the Lord's coming is near. Like, how do you even do that? How do you strengthen your heart? I mean, exercise.
That is one thing you can do.
Eat less fried food.
Yeah. But in a soul sense, I think, we say physically the way to take care of your heart is through your diet and through exercise. And I mean, like, what does it look like to look at your what do you call, like, media as your diet?
Yeah.
And then like the exercise of like your discipline and being in the Word.
Well, I think that it's interesting you bring up the word discipline, because we talked about wisdom a lot over these last few weeks, because this is, I think, a book on wisdom or how to live. But I think discipline. So if wisdom is knowledge, you need all three. So you need knowledge first to understand how to like apply. Wisdom is knowledge applied. So you need knowledge, and then wisdom helps you apply that knowledge. But discipline, I think, is how you apply that wisdom. Like it's discipline. It takes discipline to regularly work out, or to eat well, or to build a habit of reading your Bible every day. Like there's discipline that comes from that. But that's how you begin to discern and apply wisdom, like in your life. And so I think that if you want to strengthen your heart, what does it look like to build discipline into your life?
Yeah, I'm gonna say discipline and desire are interconnected.
Yeah.
But it's kind of ends up being like the chicken and the egg deal. Like sometimes I think we have. I actually heard one person say it this way, that it was a formula. It's like discipline and desire equal like love or something like that, or discipline and desire equal like growth or something like that.
Yeah.
And this person said that's a really great formula for life. It's a really bad formula for your relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
Because so much like I know for myself, when I started following Jesus, I just thought this desire thing would come naturally. Like,
Takes
and
time.
I think that I think that we can have experiences, especially experiences when we receive salvation. Like we're changed, we're a new person. We can have an encounter with the presence of God in like a small group setting or a worship setting or whatever, a prayer night, whatever. And then I think we've all got to that place, like if you're a believer, that it just is like, where is the desire?
Yeah.
And like, this feels like I'm dragging my feet through a bunch of mud.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's been times in my life where I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it, but I am going to sit down. I'm going to read. I'm going to journal.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a prayer. And then I'm going to fold up my Bible and go about my day. And I think that, to be honest, we can go through weeks or months of that, like feeling like drudgery, like of discipline, that has come in handy later, that I've realized I'm so glad that I committed to that, because now I can start to see how all of these threads are weaving a larger tapestry.
Yeah.
That's good.
I was thinking about what you just said about strengthening your heart. I was like, that's a really interesting thought, because we know from Jeremiah 17:9, it tells us the heart is the most deceitful part of us. I was like, well, how do you strengthen your heart if it's the most deceitful thing about us? But I just pulled that up and kept reading, and it says then in verse 10, I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind to reward each person according to their conduct. And so I think that's where the whole book of James is about, how do you conduct yourself as a Christian practically? And so to strengthen your heart would be to strengthen your conduct as a Christian. And that falls exactly to what you just said about, we talked about obedience once before, obedience, discipline, all these things before like Almighty God.
And that's a good thought, just to transition us as we close out this whole podcast. I mean, is there any big applications we can take away from the book of James as a whole?
For me, it's just that like James got it. Like James fully understood what he is asking is hard.
Yeah.
And I love how he's not trying to give us any new information, but he's trying to like leverage with us, like relate to us on how to apply information that Jesus has already taught. Like so much of James also alludes to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Like there's so many parallels. And I just really appreciate, again, James, I feel that big brother energy. Like, I get that it's hard, but here's how you endure. I get that it's hard, but here's how you find joy in suffering. Like, he gets it.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought up the Sermon on the Mount, because that was going to be my big closing
so
thing.
sorry.
No, it's all good. But I think it's so true. I think James is a practical way for you to look or interpret or think about the way Jesus calls us to live.
Yeah.
And I think that's just my big takeaway, is if you're listening to this and you consider yourself a Christ follower, I mean, this is probably going mostly out to our community here at X Church, and just know that like following Jesus isn't just a one-time decision. It's a lifetime of learning more about the way God calls us to live, and then wisdom, applying that knowledge. And it takes discipline to get there. And I think that really, as I think about James, like James is a roadmap for how to think when it comes to living a life that reflects what Jesus calls us to do. And I think that alone makes it worth reading and worth thinking about, and worth dialoguing with yourself and with your trusted group of friends. Like, hey, how am I doing? Like, am I living up to this? And where do I need to grow? And what are some steps I need to take? And I think it can be overwhelming. Like, okay, do I have to do all this at one time? Like, put all this now, like, put this all into practice. And I think grabbing one or two things and just saying, okay, I'm going to get this down in my life. Because remember, this is a journey. Like, it's going to take a lifetime of continuing to apply this to your life. And that's the joy of it. Can you look back in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, and just be like, man, I see the hand of God in my life. I can see him working in my life. I can see how, as I've applied this wisdom to my life, that my life has gotten better. And it doesn't mean that like it'll be an easy 5 years or an easy 10 years or whatever it is, but you're gonna be able to look back and you're gonna be able to say, no, like, I am a better person now than what I was before.
You'll see the fruit.
The fruit of the Spirit that we talked about, that God has changed us.
That's good.
Any thoughts for you?
I think I would think, like, going back to the original audience of this being Jews. I think that James is not trying to, like, James is essentially not outright like Paul would do, or anybody else in the New Testament would lay out the gospel, meaning like the good news, and like Jesus came to die and he was sinless and he came to rescue our souls. I think that James, what I appreciate and like is that he's saying, okay, so salvation is yours.
Yeah.
And it's not because you were like in the lineage of Abraham. It's actually because your brother Jesus was crucified and died for you. Now, this is a great guidebook to see if there's evidence of that salvation there.
Yeah.
So I think that the book as a whole really challenges us to ask the question, do I have evidence? Do I have fruit of my salvation? Because all of these things, it's like kind of a giant checklist of like, do I have, like, am I a doer of the word? Do I go through trials and am I transformed in maturity from them? Do I pick favorites? Like, do I have works to back up my faith? Do I have a good control on my tongue? Like, things like that. Or are my prayers effective? I mean, there's so many different things that I think James lays out to us. And I think in one sweeping statement, he's saying, remember, all this stems from your salvation.
Yep.
That's really good.
That's so good. That's good.
Well, hey guys, this has been really fun.
It's been so fun.
And I hope all you listening out there have also enjoyed it. I know I really have. Like, the book of James just feels so special to me now. Like, I feel like I have a really well-rounded understanding of him. And we hope you guys have enjoyed the pod, but also that you've enjoyed the sermon series, Word to the Wise. We hope to do podcasts like this, hopefully in the future, with more series. So subscribe to the Discipleship Pod. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.